All right, today we're diving into something pretty fascinating in medical training. We're going to look at a totally new way of doing things. So forget those old dusty textbooks and sitting through endless lectures. We're going to explore how the exact same ideas that make video games so addictive are now being used to train the next generation of doctors. So let's start with this. For, over 100 years, this one little phrase, see one, do one, teach one, has been the absolute foundation of surgical training. And the idea behind it is pretty straightforward. A trainee watches a procedure, then they're expected to just do it themselves, and finally they teach it to someone else. It's this really direct model of apprenticeship. So here's our game plan. First, we'll break down why that classic model just isn't cutting it anymore. Then we'll get into how learning itself is being totally rethought. And this is the cool part, how the world of gaming gives us a surprising advantage. We'll see how medicine is literally being turned into a game, but we'll also look at the potential pitfalls. And finally, we'll piece it all together to see the new learning cycle for the modern doctor. All right, first up, let's dig into why this classic method is really starting to feel the pressure in today's world. This right here, this is the heart of the problem. You've got the traditional view, which kind of assumes you can just watch something once and be good to go. But then you slam into modern reality, where patient safety is and should be everything. The idea of a trainee practicing on a real person after just one observation, well, it raises some huge red flags. The risk for mistakes is just way too high. And this isn't just a what-if scenario. The numbers are pretty jarring. Studies have found that up to 42% of medical residents say they feel inadequately trained to safely perform certain procedures by themselves for the very first time. I mean, think about that. That's almost half of new doctors feeling unprepared when it matters most. So if the old model's got some serious cracks, what's the alternative? Well, it all starts with a major shift in how we think about learning, moving away from just passively watching and toward actively getting involved. And this learning pyramid shows us why that shift is so important. I mean, look at this. At the very top, you have passive methods, like listening to a lecture, and you only retain about 5% of the information. 5%. But as you move down, as you get more active, the numbers just explode. Actually practicing by doing something, that jumps retention to 75%. And teaching it to someone else, that gets you all the way to 90%. It's a massive difference. And this is the key concept here, active learning. It's all about getting learners to do something, to solve a puzzle, to discuss a case, to actually get their hands dirty instead of just sitting there and listening. It really flips the script. You go from being a passive bucket for information to an active builder of your own knowledge. And why does this work so well? Well, it turns out it taps into these three fundamental human needs. We all crave autonomy, the feeling that we're in control of our own actions. We want competence, that amazing feeling of getting good at something. And we need relatedness, a connection to other people. So when you create a learning environment that hits all three of those, that's when people really start to shine. So how do we build a learning system that does all that? Well, funny enough, the inspiration is coming from a place you probably wouldn't expect at all, the world of video games. And that brings us to this idea of gamification. Now, this isn't about turning medical school into an arcade. Not at all. It's about borrowing the clever design elements that make games so, addictive. Things like points, levels, and leaderboards, and using them in a non-game context, like medical training, to make learning way more engaging and motivating. So how does it actually work? Well, think about any video game you've ever played. They're masters at this. First, they break down a really complex skill into tiny, manageable chunks. Second, you get constant, immediate feedback. Those little dings and rewards that feel so good. We call them quick wins. And third, the game gets harder gradually as you get better. It builds on what you've learned. You master level 1 before you get to level 2. Okay, so this all sounds great on paper, but what does it really look like when you're in a busy, chaotic hospital? Let's check out a couple of real-world examples where gamification is actually being used. Okay, first up, ultrasound training. Now, instead of just telling residents to go practice, one program turned it into this weekly challenge. The whole point was to build up the muscle memory you need to do these scans quickly and accurately. And the rules were pretty brilliant. You got points for being accurate, you could earn special badges for being fast, and, of course, they put up a public leaderboard to create some friendly competition. They even had weekly challenges to keep things fresh. Suddenly, a routine task became this fun, motivating game you wanted to get good at. Now, for our second example, we're really upping the stakes. They took a super serious emergency scenario, a GI bleed, and turned it into this intense, high-tech simulation.
But here's the twist. It was framed as a collaborative game designed to make the team work better together under pressure.
And check out these clever mechanics they used. They put a health bar above the patient mannequin, so if the team made a mistake, they'd see it drop in real time. Team members got role cards with special powers, like the leader could call a time pause to strategize. They even piped in loud, distracting noises to simulate the chaos of a real ER. The goal wasn't just to pass a test. It was for the whole team to beat the game together.
But hold on, it can't all be fun and games, right? Of course not. And while gamification has a ton of promise, it's really important that we take a balanced look at the potential downsides.
Take leaderboards, for example. Yeah, they can be a huge motivator. They push people to practice more. But there's a flip side. If you're not careful, they can create this unhealthy rivalry. They might even encourage people to prioritize getting a high score quickly over the slow, thoughtful, deep learning that's absolutely critical for a doctor. And there's also the risk of just hoop jumping, doing something for the points, not for the learning. A survey of the NHS e-portfolio system, which uses some of these game-like elements, found that a whopping 67% of trainees felt it didn't really capture their actual skills. It just felt like another box to tick. And finally, let's just be practical for a second. Building these amazing high-tech simulations, it's a huge investment. It takes dedicated space, really expensive equipment, and maybe the toughest thing of all, it takes time. You have to pull busy doctors away from their patients to do this training, and that's a real challenge. So, after all that, where does this leave us? Well, the goal isn't to just toss out that old see one, do one, teach one idea completely. There's still wisdom there. The goal is to evolve it, to build a smarter, safer, and more effective learning cycle for the 21st century. And that brings us to this new, updated version of the adage. It takes the original idea and expands it into this powerful feedback loop. You see many procedures. You do many with supervision. And you're constantly learning from the outcomes. This is where things like simulation and gamification become so crucial. They provide that safe space to practice over and over again to build that competence without ever putting a patient at risk. And that really leaves us with one last big thought to chew on. If we can use these game principles to reshape how we train someone to perform life-saving surgery, just think about what else we could do. What other incredibly complex, high-stakes skills, from flying a commercial jet to negotiating a peace treaty, could we learn to master simply by learning how to beat the game? Thanks for joining us.